He was just a small boy, no older than many children who spent their days running through streets, climbing trees, or kicking a ball across open fields. But this boy was different. While others laughed, played, and chased each other in the sunlight, he often sat quietly, listening to something only his heart could hear. Music. Not the loud kind, not the kind that shakes walls or dances in parties, but the kind that rises gently like a whisper and settles softly in the soul. Every time he heard the soft notes of a piano, he felt something move inside him, something warm, something alive. He did not know when it began. Maybe it was the first time he walked past a music shop and heard those keys being played by someone he never saw. Maybe it was the first time he heard the slow, smooth melody coming from a distant radio in a neighbor's house. Or maybe, just maybe, he was born with it. All he knew was that the sound of the piano felt like home, even though he had never touched one. He would stop wherever he was and listen. His eyes would shine. His heart would slow down, then beat faster again. For him, the piano was not an instrument, it was a voice, a language he could understand without learning, a story without words, a dream wrapped in sound. At night, when the world was quiet and the streets were still, he would lie in bed imagining the keys under his fingers. White keys, black keys, his small hands moving lightly from one to another. He imagined music flowing through him as if he were the piano itself. He dreamed of playing in front of people who would listen, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. In his mind, he could hear applause, see smiles, feel pride. It was a dream so clear that it felt real. But dreams are easy, reality is not. His family was simple, not wealthy, not connected to musicians or teachers. They didn't own a piano, not even a keyboard. Music lessons were expensive. The world around him was full of voices telling him what was possible and what was not. They believed dreams were only dreams. They believed children like him should focus on school, on work, on life that was ordinary and predictable. And yet, the boy kept dreaming. He would walk to the community hall every Sunday where an old piano sat in the corner, dusty and neglected. No one played it anymore. People walked past it without looking, like it was just another piece of furniture. But the boy never ignored it. He would stand near it, close enough to touch but too afraid to do so. His heart beat fast just seeing it. It was like standing near the ocean but not knowing how to swim. Beautiful, huge, a little frightening. Sometimes, when no one was around, he would place his hand gently on the edge of the piano. The wood felt cold, but it made his heart warm. He would close his eyes and imagine the keys beneath his fingers. He could not play, but in his mind he already knew how. Days passed, and his love only grew stronger. Music was not just a hobby for him, it was his identity. It was the dream he carried quietly like a secret treasure. He never told many people about it because how could they understand, how could they feel what he felt? It was easier to keep the dream inside, safe and shining like a flame. Then came the moment he gathered courage. He decided he would ask for help. He would ask for just one chance to learn, to practice, to sit in front of that piano and let his fingers try to speak. His heart was young, but it was brave. He believed that if he asked, maybe someone would see the spark in him, maybe someone would open a door, but he didn't know yet how the world works. He didn't know that dreams are often questioned, doubted, and ignored before they are celebrated. He didn't know that some people can't recognize talent unless it already shines. Still, he held his dream close, like a small bird in his hands, delicate, fragile, but alive. He walked every day with music inside him. Every sound was a reminder of what he wanted. Every time he heard even a faint note, even a distant melody, his chest filled with hope. For him, music was not noise, it was purpose. It was the reason he woke up excited and slept imagining tomorrow. He wasn't just a boy. He was a dreamer. He was someone who believed that hearts speak louder than words. He did not have the piano yet. He did not have a teacher, a guide, or any promise of opportunity. But he had something more important. He had the spark. The spark that starts every great journey. The spark that survives doubt, rejection, and silence. He carried a dream like a lantern in darkness, not bright enough to light the whole path, but strong enough to guide every step forward. And that dream was waiting for its moment, just one moment to shine. He was still the same boy, still carrying the same dream, but now he reached the point where dreaming was no longer enough. He wanted action. He wanted progress. He wanted to move from imagining music to creating it. The only thing he needed was a chance. Just one. A single opportunity to sit in front of a piano and show that his heart knew what his hands had never been taught. So one morning, with hope filling his chest like sunlight, he decided to ask. His fingers trembled a little, but his steps were firm. He approached his school music teacher first, a woman with a strict face and glasses that sat perfectly on her nose. She was respected, talented, someone who could open the first door for him. He stood before her, nervous but brave, and said quietly, "Ma'am, I want to learn piano. Can you give me a chance?" She stared at him for a moment, surprised. He was not the student she expected to make such a request. He was quiet, unnoticed, not someone who stood out. She shook her head gently and said, "You need training, discipline, experience. Piano is not for everyone." And just like that, the first door closed, but he didn't stop. He tried again. He visited a local music class later that week. Children were already practicing instruments inside. The room was full of sound, full of possibility. He asked the instructor if he could join, even if only to learn slowly. The instructor's answer came like cold rain: "We only accept students with basic knowledge. Come back when you're trained." How could he learn if no one let him begin? Still, he walked home with quiet courage. His dream hurt, but it didn't break. Days passed and he asked more people, neighbors who owned small keyboards, older students who practiced after school, even a shopkeeper who tuned instruments. Some said no politely, some said no with laughter, some didn't even listen long enough to understand. They saw only a boy, they didn't see the fire in his heart. The world is quick to judge dreams that do not yet shine. But he continued because hope, even when fragile, never fully dies. He would sit outside the community hall where he first saw the piano, waiting for someone to notice his interest. He watched people walk in and out, musicians and performers, confident and skilled. He wondered when he would belong among them. He wondered how many no's he would have to face before he heard a yes. Sometimes rejection feels heavier than failure. One evening, when a small music event took place in that same hall, he gathered all his courage again. He approached one of the organizers, a man holding a clipboard, busy and important looking. The boy spoke softly, his voice nearly trembling. "Sir, please let me play just once. I want to learn. I won't waste your time." The man looked down at him and sighed. "This event is for trained performers. You need skill, not just desire." And he walked away, leaving the boy standing alone with his untouched dream. That night, the boy felt something he had never felt before, pain deeper than disappointment. He wondered why something his heart loved so much was always out of reach. Why opportunity was something he had to beg for while others received it easily. Why some dreams come with locked doors and heavy keys. But he also remembered something important. He remembered how it felt to hear the piano. He remembered the warm melody in his mind. He remembered the dream that made even rejection feel worth it. So instead of breaking, he strengthened. He began teaching himself however he could. If he couldn't play the piano, he would learn the keys on paper. He drew them on cardboard, full-sized, carefully measured. His fingers practiced on silence, no music, no sound, only muscle memory and imagination. He would watch videos secretly, observe hand movements, study rhythm. His tiny room became his classroom. His heartbeat became his metronome. Some nights he cried quietly, but even his tears sounded like music to his dream. He continued asking whenever a new opportunity appeared. At festivals, gatherings, church events, school functions, he always hoped someone would say yes. But most people smiled sadly and said, maybe later, which really meant no. Others laughed, thinking his dream was childish and unrealistic. They saw a kid without training, but they didn't see the dream inside him growing every day. Rejection can do two things: destroy you or build you. The boy chose the second. Each no sharpened his hunger. Each closed door made him knock harder. Each denial made his dream stronger than before. Sometimes, when he practiced on his paper keyboard, he whispered to himself, "One day they will listen. One day they will know." He didn't know when that day would come. He didn't know how. All he knew was that a dream asking for one chance will always keep trying, because even when everyone denies you, your heart doesn't. Time passed, but his dream didn't fade. In fact, it grew louder, like music waiting behind a closed door, wanting to be heard. He had been denied again and again, but instead of walking away, he decided to walk deeper into his passion. If no one would teach him, he would teach himself. If no one would let him play, he would practice without sound. Inspiration sometimes grows best in silence. He began to spend more time alone, not because he wanted to isolate himself, but because that was the only way he could be close to his goal. In quiet corners of his home, he unfolded the paper keyboard he created. It was not real, it had no sound, but to him it was priceless. His fingers moved slowly at first, like a child taking first steps. He studied the distance between keys, memorized positions, learned chords by watching videos through borrowed devices when someone allowed him. Knowledge became his secret treasure. Every night after finishing schoolwork and helping with small chores at home, he would sit with his paper piano. His room was dim, lit only by a small lamp whose yellow glow made shadows dance across the walls. Sometimes his fingers hovered above the cardboard keys without touching, as if imagining sound was enough to make it real. And in those moments, music existed only in his mind, but it was beautiful. There were days when he doubted himself, when his fingers felt stiff and unskilled, when he wondered if a dream built on silence could ever enter a world full of noise. Yet every doubt lasted only a moment, because hope would always whisper back, "Keep going." And he did. He watched other people play whenever he could. At school events, in markets where someone played casually, on TV screens displayed in shop windows, he never missed an opportunity to observe. He noticed how their fingers danced so fluently, how their bodies moved with the rhythm, how their faces softened or strained depending on the emotion in the music. He studied everything like a scientist studies stars, patiently with wonder. Sometimes children teased him. They asked why he practiced on paper. They laughed at the idea of soundless music. But he never answered with anger. He simply smiled a little, folded his keyboard gently, and walked away with his dream intact. They heard nothing, he heard everything. Even rejection became routine, but he learned from it. Each time someone told him no, he understood one more thing about the world. He learned that talent isn't given, it is built. That belief is not handed to dreamers, they must earn it. That success comes only when the heart refuses to accept silence forever. His fingers slowly began to move faster, more confidently. He could press an invisible key and almost hear it. He could close his eyes and imagine a chord, a melody, a full piece coming alive. He practiced scales, chords, timing, things he had never been taught yet somehow understood. His dream guided him like a teacher he never met. One rainy afternoon, something changed. As he walked home, droplets falling around him like tiny beats of rhythm, he heard piano music from an open classroom window. The sound was soft but powerful, like someone speaking with the voice he wished he had. He stood in the rain, soaked but motionless, listening. His hair dripped, his shoes filled with water, but he didn't move because the music was worth it. When the piece ended, he whispered to himself, "One day I will play like that." He didn't say if, he said will. That was the moment hope became determination. He stopped caring about how long it would take, he only cared about growing. He read about famous musicians who practiced for years before being noticed. He discovered stories of artists who were rejected, doubted, mocked, and then applauded. Those stories became fuel. Every word sharpened his resolve. At home, he set new goals for himself. He practiced longer, even if it meant staying up until everyone else was asleep. He challenged himself to learn new finger patterns, new imagined tunes. Sometimes the paper keyboard wore out from constant use, and he drew another. His mother wondered why he always asked for cardboard and markers. She never imagined he was building his dream with them. Late at night, when the world was silent and only the sound of his own breathing filled the room, he hummed the melodies he practiced silently during the day. His humming became a companion to the movements of his fingers. Slowly, he began connecting imagination with rhythm. He was not just learning piano, he was learning resilience. He knew the world had said no many times, but he also knew dreams do not disappear because of rejection. They disappear when hearts give up, and his heart never did. He became stronger than doubt, stronger than silence, stronger than rejection. He learned one powerful truth: sometimes the dream grows the most when no one is watching. Sometimes the star forms long before anyone sees its light. And somewhere deep inside him, the silent music he practiced every day was preparing itself for the moment when it would finally be heard. The boy was still waiting for one chance, one moment, one open door. And though he didn't know it yet, the music inside him was slowly preparing to silence every doubter he had ever met. Time moved forward, but the boy's dream remained exactly where it had always lived, inside him, patient yet burning. His silent practice continued every night, his cardboard piano becoming worn at the edges, the printed keys fading under countless hours of touch. He played without sound, without guidance, without applause, yet his heart beat like music all the same. After weeks of practice, after many failures and small victories that no one else ever saw, he felt ready to try again. He wanted to step beyond imagination and into reality. He wanted to hear real keys under his fingers, not paper, not memory, but cold ivory that responded with sound. He felt he deserved at least one chance. So with renewed courage, he tried again. He returned to the same music teacher who had rejected him before. This time he spoke with greater confidence, his voice steady even though his heart raced. "Ma'am, I've been practicing. I really want to learn, please just give me one chance to show you." She looked at him, really looked, and for a moment she saw something different in his eyes, determination, pain, hope. But she also saw inexperience, and once again she shook her head gently as if she were protecting him from disappointment. "Piano is not easy. It takes years and you are not ready. You should focus on something else." Another's no. Another door closed. The boy thanked her with a small smile, though inside he felt something break a little. But broken things sometimes shine brighter. He walked out, and instead of going home, he stopped by the hall again, a place that felt like both heaven and heartbreak. The piano inside tempted him like a dream locked behind glass. A staff member noticed him standing there and asked what he wanted. The boy swallowed and said quietly, "I want to play just once, even if no one listens." The man laughed lightly, thinking it was a child's fantasy. "That piano is for performers, not for practice. You need experience first." Experience, the very thing he was begging for. He left again, head lowered, dream shaking but still alive. At home, he sat on his paper keys and played until tears blurred the lines he had drawn. He wasn't crying because he was weak, he cried because he cared. The more something is loved, the more rejection hurts. And yet he still woke up the next morning and practiced again. Rejection became his shadow, but he walked forward anyway. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is moving despite it. Months passed like this. Sometimes he felt strong, sometimes broken. Sometimes he believed he was close, sometimes he felt the dream slipping away. But one thing never changed. He kept trying. Then came a day unlike others. A large music event was announced, performers, students, professionals all gathering for a grand evening. The same hall, the same piano, the same world he wanted to enter. The boy felt hope spark again. Maybe this was the moment. Maybe someone would finally see him. He waited outside the event office for hours, watching performers come and go. He held his cardboard keyboard tightly in his hands, a symbol of everything he'd fought for. When an organizer walked past, the boy gathered all the courage he had left and spoke, "Sir, please let me play. I don't need a long time. Just a few minutes. I want to show what I've learned." The man looked at him like one looks at hopeful snow melting in sun, beautiful but unlikely to last. "No, this event is only for trained players. You have no experience." The boy nodded slowly but didn't move. He spoke again, softer, breaking but still hopeful, "I only need one chance." The man sighed, annoyed. "You need to stop asking. You're wasting your time. Come back when you have real skill." Real skill? The words echoed inside him like heavy steps in an empty hall. How was he supposed to gain skill if no one would let him touch the instrument? A dream without opportunity is like a bird without sky. But he didn't argue. He simply stepped back, eyes full but silent, because tears are sometimes louder than words. He walked home slowly, carrying the weight of all the rejections he'd collected like scars. He thought of all the times he practiced in the dark, all the times he believed, all the times he asked. And at that moment he felt close to giving up, closer than ever before. That night he didn't practice. He sat in silence, staring at his paper keys without touching them. His fingers rested still, like wings unsure if they could fly again. He wondered if the world was right, if he was foolish to believe he could play. He wondered if dreams were only meant for those who already had opportunities, guidance, money, support. Maybe he was chasing something too big. Maybe music wasn't meant for him. But then something happened, something quiet, small but powerful. He closed his eyes, and even in silence he heard it again. The piano, his dream, calling him softly but clearly. And he realized something. Rejection could stop his hands but not his heart. Doors could stay closed but his dream still shouted inside him. The world could say no 1,000 times, but he only needed one yes. He wiped his tears and placed his fingers on the cardboard keys once more. He wasn't finished, not even close. This was only the silence before the storm, because the boy who asked for one chance was preparing for the moment that would change everything. Days turned into weeks, and slowly the pain of rejection turned into strength. The boy who once cried silently now carried something new inside him, patience sharpened by disappointment. He no longer begged for approval like he once did. Now he focused on one thing only, getting better, even if no one could hear it. He practiced every night again, his fingers flowing across the paper keyboard the way water slides across stone, quiet but unstoppable. Sometimes he hummed softly, sometimes he tapped the table for rhythm. Every movement meant something, every hour added skill. His dream was no longer just hope, it had become discipline. He did not know that life was secretly watching him. The world often tests those who dream, but it also rewards those who don't quit. Then one afternoon, something unexpected happened. The grand music event, the same one he had been denied from, was only a week away. Posters filled every street corner, students rehearsed, musicians prepared, everyone was excited. And then news arrived that one of the performers fell ill, a main pianist scheduled for the event. People worried. Organizers searched for replacements, but trained pianists were few and the event was too close. The hall buzzed with pressure. The boy heard the news like a distant echo, but he did not get excited. He had learned not to hope too quickly. Still, the possibility flickered inside him like a tiny flame. One chance, that's all he ever asked for. 3 days before the event, chaos filled the hall. No new pianist was available. Rehearsals were delayed. The piano sat center stage like a silent king waiting for someone to take the throne. Hope was shrinking for everyone except the boy. He stood outside the hall once again, same place, same dream, but a different heart. He was stronger now. He was ready. He was no longer waiting for approval, he was waiting for opportunity, and opportunity finally knocked. An elderly janitor, always quiet and unnoticed, had seen the boy countless times standing near the hall. He remembered him, the child who never gave up. That day he walked up to the boy and said softly, "You really want to play that piano, don't you?" The boy looked up surprised, his voice barely rose above a whisper. "Yes, more than anything." The old man nodded slowly as if he had been waiting for this truth. Then come with me. He unlocked the hall door and led the boy inside. The room was empty, silent, sacred. The grand piano stood under warm lights like a dream made of wood and strings. The boy stood frozen, breathing fast, eyes shining like stars. Go on, the man said gently. Sit, play whatever your heart knows. The boy stepped forward slowly. His legs felt weak, his hands trembled not from fear but from the weight of finally touching what he had chased for so long. He sat. He placed his fingers on the real keys for the first time in his life. Cold, smooth, alive, he pressed one key. A sound was born, not imagination, not memory, a real note, a voice he had waited years to hear. Tears filled his eyes, but he blinked them away. He placed his fingers on the keys like greeting old friends he had never met. And then he played. No one had taught him how, no one had guided his hands. But he played from a place deeper than training. A soft melody flowed out, shaky at first like a child learning to walk, then steadier, fuller, warmer. Every note carried his journey. Every chord carried his pain. Every pause carried a story of rejection, practice, hope. The old janitor stood quietly, eyes wide, heart moved. He had cleaned floors in that hall for years, heard thousands of people play, but he had never heard music like this. This was not just skill. This was hunger, passion, a dream finally speaking. When the boy finished, silence filled the room, not empty silence, but the kind that holds emotion. The old man clapped slowly. You must play in the event, he said firmly. The world needs to hear you. For the first time in his life, someone believed in him, not because of words, because of music, and that was enough. The old janitor took him to the event coordinator. The boy stood there trembling, but the sound of the piano still echoed in his heart, giving him courage. The janitor spoke with a voice full of certainty. This boy can fill the empty spot. He can play. The coordinator hesitated. A child, untaught, untrained, impossible, but the janitor insisted. The boy stood silently, not begging this time, but ready. Finally, the coordinator sighed. Fine, he gets one chance. One performance, no mistakes. One chance? The words felt like lightning through the boy's soul. He nodded, eyes shining, heart steady. The door that was closed for years had finally opened. The opportunity he begged for. The world was now giving it to him, not because someone handed it to him, but because he earned it. The stage was waiting, the piano was listening, the dream was breathing. Soon the hall would be filled with people. Soon every doubter would hear the truth. Soon his silent practice would become a storm of sound. And for the first time in his life, he was ready. The day of the event arrived like a sunrise after years of long nights. The hall that once felt distant and unreachable now stood open before him. Red curtains hung tall, golden lights glowed warmly, and rows of polished seats waited to be filled with people who would soon listen. People who once would have walked past him without noticing. He walked toward the entrance slowly, as if afraid the dream might disappear if he moved too fast. Inside, performers prepared with confidence, dressed in sharp suits and elegant gowns. They held sheet music, tuned instruments, and chatted with a calm ease born from experience, the very experience he never had. He stood among them, a small boy with nothing but belief to guide him. Some stared, some whispered, wondering why a child with no history of training was there. They didn't know the journey that lived behind his silence. He held his hands together, trying to stop them from shaking. He remembered every no, every closed door, every time someone told him he couldn't do it. But now he stood where none of them ever imagined he would. The old janitor gave him a reassuring nod from the side of the stage, his presence like a lighthouse in a storm. You earned this, the old man whispered. Now let them hear it. The boy took a deep breath. People filled the hall soon after, parents, music teachers, young artists, curious listeners. The room buzzed with excitement and expectation. As the lights dimmed, silence spread like night falling gently across a field. Performers played one after another, their music skilled, practiced, perfect. Applause rose, loud and bright, like fireworks after every completion. The boy waited behind the curtain, each performance echoing through him. His heart raced, but not out of fear, out of the weight of what was coming. He thought of the countless nights practicing on cardboard keys. He thought of rejection that nearly crushed him. He thought of how no one believed until now. Then the coordinator called his name, a name no one recognized, a name no one expected, a name about to change everything. He stepped out slowly. The stage lights felt warm and blinding at the same time, like standing inside a dream. The audience murmured, confused, curious. A child, alone, no sheet music, some smiled politely, some doubted openly. But doubt never frightened him anymore. He had grown stronger than their expectations. He sat at the grand piano, the real one, no longer behind glass or imagination. His fingers hovered above the keys, and for a moment he closed his eyes. In that stillness he heard everything he had ever practiced, the silent notes, the imagined melodies, the dream he carried for so long. And then he played. The first note was soft, like a whisper finally spoken aloud. The hall leaned in. He continued, keys flowing under his touch with tenderness and strength woven together. His hands moved with memory, not training, instinct, not instruction. The music he had practiced silently now filled the room with sound, rich and warm, like a story unfolding. Every note carried a chapter of his life. The early dream, the rejection, the tears, the hope, the fire inside him that refused to die, the audience felt it. Their doubt began to fade, replaced by something deeper: wonder. His melody rose higher, growing bolder, like wings spreading wide for the first time. His eyes stayed closed not from fear but from connection. He was not just playing piano, he was speaking through it, breathing through it, living through it. Playing piano, he was speaking through it, breathing through it, living through it. The music changed pace gently, flowing like a river through mountains and valleys. Soft then strong, slow then urgent. His fingers moved like they belonged to the keys, like they were made for them. The hall, once filled with whispers and doubt, now sat completely still. No cough, no movement, only breathless listening. He poured his entire heart into that performance. Every no became a note, every tear became harmony, every dream became sound. In that moment, the boy who practiced on cardboard was no different from the greatest musicians the audience had ever heard. He reached the final part of his piece, a part he created from his pain, shaped from his patience. The melody swelled like a rising sun, then released gently, slowly, beautifully. The final note lingered in the air, hanging like a star suspended in night. Silence followed, not silence of doubt, not silence of rejection. A sacred silence, a stunned silence, and then applause. It began softly, as if people needed a moment to return to themselves. Then it grew louder, fuller, deeper. Hands clapped like thunder, feet tapped, voices cheered. People stood from their seats, not out of politeness but out of awe. A standing ovation for a boy no one believed in. He opened his eyes and saw what he had dreamed of for years, faces filled with admiration, disbelief, respect. Teachers who once rejected him clapped the loudest. Students who laughed now watched him with shining eyes. The world that once denied him now applauded him. His hands trembled again, not with fear but with joy. He had not just played piano, he had silenced every doubt. He had rewritten his story. He looked toward the janitor, the man who gave him his first yes. The old man's eyes were filled with tears, his smile wide and proud. That single belief changed everything. One person, one chance, one moment. And the boy finally understood. This is what dreams sound like when they are heard. The applause felt endless. It washed over him like a warm wave after years of cold rejection. The boy sat still for a moment, letting the sound sink into his soul. His fingers rested lightly on the keys, the final note still echoing in his heart long after it faded from the room. He slowly stood up. The stage lights painted a soft golden glow across his face, highlighting the disbelief, relief, and joy that mixed inside his chest like colors swirling in water. He bowed, shy, humble, grateful. And when he lifted his head, he saw something he had never seen before: not doubt, not pity, not dismissal. He saw admiration. Faces that once looked past him now looked at him. Eyes that once questioned now sparkled with respect. People whispered, but not with disbelief, with wonder. They asked who he was, how he learned, how such music lived inside someone who never had a lesson. He had been invisible once. Now the whole room wanted to see him clearly. As he walked off stage, people reached out to shake his hand. Musicians older than him congratulated him, voices filled with surprise. Some called him gifted. Some called him extraordinary. Some said he played with more emotion than trained pianists ever could. Every compliment felt like a piece of his broken past being gently repaired. But the most powerful moment came when he approached the janitor, the man who opened the door that changed everything. The old man placed a wrinkled hand on the boy's shoulder, eyes warm and wet. "You didn't just play music," he said softly. "You played your story and everyone heard it." The boy swallowed hard, throat tight with emotion. No words were enough, so he simply hugged the old man. A long, quiet hug that said everything his heart needed to say. "Thank you for believing. Thank you for opening the door. Thank you for hearing me when no one else did." When he stepped back, he saw more people approaching: judges, teachers, organizers. The same man who once told him he needed experience now spoke with a changed tone. "You proved something tonight. Talent is more than training. You have a gift and we want to support it." Opportunities began to appear instantly, like stars lighting up one by one after sunset. Offers for lessons, invitations to perform, chances he once begged for now stood lined up before him willingly. His dream was no longer waiting, it was unfolding. But even in that moment of glory, he remembered where he came from. He remembered the cardboard keyboard, the nights alone, the pain of hearing no, the silence that shaped his music. He realized something important. If the world had said yes from the beginning, he might have played, but he wouldn't have felt it the same way. He learned to create music out of struggle. He learned determination from denial. He learned that dreamers grow strongest when no one believes in them. As the crowd continued to celebrate, the boy stepped aside for a moment and looked at the piano again, the same piano that once felt unreachable. He walked back toward it slowly, touched the keys gently like greeting an old friend. He smiled. He had once imagined sound. Now sound had become his reality. He had once asked for one chance. Now chances surrounded him like light. The hall lights softened as the event ended. People left still talking about the performance that shattered expectations. Some left inspired, some left speechless. Many left questioning how they ever doubted him. But above all, everyone left changed. The boy walked home under a night sky full of quiet stars. Each step felt lighter than air, as if the ground could barely hold the weight of his happiness. He carried no trophy, no certificate, no award, yet he felt richer than anyone in the room. Because he carried something greater, belief, not just in music, not just in talent, but in himself. He lay down that night and looked at his cardboard keyboard one last time. It was torn, faded, worn out from endless practice. But he didn't throw it away. He placed it carefully in a drawer like a treasure, because it was the root of everything. It was the soundless stage where he trained for the loudest moment of his life. He closed his eyes, and for the first time he didn't imagine playing. He remembered playing. He remembered hearing. He remembered being heard. And as sleep slowly wrapped around him, one thought echoed gently in his mind. They doubted him. They denied him. But his music silenced every doubt. Tomorrow would bring new paths, new opportunities, new doors, but he wasn't afraid anymore. Because he now knew what only a dreamer who survives rejection understands clearly. A single moment can change everything. The next morning, sunlight entered his room quietly, like a gentle reminder that a new life had begun. He woke up slowly, still feeling the echo of last night inside him, the applause, the music, the moment he finally touched his dream. For a few seconds he wondered if it was only a dream. But then he remembered everything clearly. It was real. He had played, he had conquered, he had been heard. When he stepped outside that day, the world felt different, not because it had changed, but because he had. Streets he once walked with lowered eyes now welcomed him like paths he belonged to. People nodded at him with recognition, some even stopped him to praise the performance. Children who once laughed at his cardboard piano now looked at him with admiration. Even the air felt lighter. But the biggest change was inside him. He no longer hoped for opportunities, he expected them. He no longer feared rejection, he learned from it. He no longer wondered if he could play, he knew he could. The event organizers called him again, inviting him to perform at more shows. His name spread gently through the town like music carried by wind. Teachers who once refused to guide him now asked to train him properly. But the boy never forgot where his real training happened, alone in silence with cardboard keys and trembling fingers. One evening he returned to the hall with the janitor by his side. This time he didn't come to ask for a chance. He came to prepare for another performance. When he stepped on stage for practice, he didn't feel nervous. He felt home. The piano no longer seemed like a distant star. It felt like an extension of his heartbeat. He began to play again, not for approval, not for applause, but for the pure love of music. Every note he touched now had weight, purpose, memory. His fingers moved with a confidence born not from teaching, but from surviving. People paused to listen even during rehearsals. Some stood at the door quietly, afraid to interrupt the beauty they heard. His music now carried something more than sound, it carried a story, and every listener could feel it. One night after rehearsal, when the hall was almost empty, the janitor asked him softly, "Do you realize what you've done?" The boy shook his head slightly. "I just played," the old man smiled. "No. You proved something important. You proved that talent can be born anywhere, even in silence. You proved that dreams don't need permission. You proved that one moment is enough to rewrite a life." The boy looked at the piano again, remembering everything it represented. Not just success, not just recognition, but struggle, failure, hope. The boy understood now music was not only sound. It was everything he lived through. Weeks turned into months. His journey grew, more performances, more people listening. He became known not just as a pianist, but as a story, a reminder that greatness often begins where no one is watching. He told his story whenever someone asked. He didn't hide the pain, the rejection, the cardboard keys. Because he knew there were others in the world holding dreams quietly, afraid to ask, afraid to fail, afraid to be laughed at. He wanted them to know something important. Rejection is not the end. It is the beginning. He encouraged young dreamers to try, to fail, to try again. He told them that talent is not only in those who are given opportunities, but also in those who create opportunities from nothing. He spoke about the night he almost gave up and how close he came to losing everything he worked for. But he didn't. He continued. And because he continued, the world finally listened. Years later, when he sat at a piano in front of an even larger audience, thousands instead of hundreds, he remembered the small boy he once was. The one standing outside the hall with hope in his eyes and a cardboard keyboard in his hands. He realized that if someone had let him in easily from the beginning, he might have learned to play, but he wouldn't have learned to fight. Fight for his dream. Fight for one chance, fight for his voice. He pressed the first key of the evening performance, and the sound rang out clear and sure. The music flowed like it always did, but this time with something deeper: wisdom, gratitude, purpose. He was no longer the boy who asked for a chance, he was the boy who earned it. And as the final note of the night rolled into silence, the applause exploded like thunder. People stood again. They cheered, they whistled, they clapped until their hands hurt. But now he did not tremble. He smiled, calm and radiant, like someone who finally reached the place he belonged. His journey wasn't about music alone. It was about persistence. It was about faith. It was about proving that one yes is enough to erase 1,000 no's. He looked over the audience, and for a moment he saw younger versions of himself in them, children with dreams, teenagers with fear, adults with forgotten hopes. His voice was calm, soft, but powerful when he finally spoke. I only needed one chance, and I'm glad I never stopped asking. The hall went silent, not with emptiness, but with impact. His story became more than a performance. It became a message. A message for anyone who has ever been told no. A message for anyone who has ever practiced in silence. A message for anyone who dreams: never stop, never doubt, never give up. Because one day your music will silence every doubter too.